Good afternoon and welcome to this SRA webinar. The topic for today is what should be our priorities for 2022-2023 business planning. We have a draft consultation out and we have got an introduction that we're going to give in this set of slides. My colleague Chris Hansford is going to be running through those. We've got some pre-submitted questions and you can submit questions live. You just need to do that by using the link at the bottom of the video. It's going to be filmed for us and ready to broadcast again on YouTube. Anybody who wants to raise issues, as I say, you could just submit and we will be taking as long as it needs to get through all of your questions. We've had, as I say, many pre-submitted ones, but we're also happy to take ones that are stimulated by Chris's presentation and the further discussion. My name, as you know, is Tracy Vegro, and I'm the Executive Director of Strategy and Innovation here at the SRA. The business planning project is one that's very important to us because a lot of the clear new objectives, a lot of the activities we're going to be pursuing under this year's business plan are very core. They pick up things like law tech. They pick up things like standards, all sorts of detail of what we're here to do as a regulator. But also we've tried this year to reflect feedback from stakeholders that we've had throughout the year as we've delivered last year's business plan, and that we're starting to do work to develop the next 3-year corporate strategy. I'm not going to preempt what Chris is going to say in terms of the headlines of this year's business plan, but I did want to just touch on how important it is for us to have stakeholder involvement. These kind of webinars are one mechanism, but the process of how we've engaged is just as important as what's in the business plan. So there'll be an opportunity again to give you your feedback through the link in the bottom of the link of the screen. But at any time you can always contact us through other means, and we're very, very interested to hear people's views and take questions. Without further ado, I'm going to ask Chris to just run through the slides. We think this will probably take us about 10 minutes or so. And then there's plenty of opportunities for questions. We're never sure quite how many people are going to join us and whether people will join at the start or in the middle of the event, but we won't prolong the time. We're conscious it's lunchtime and we're very thankful for you giving your time. So I will give everybody, though, a full 5-minute warning before we do start to wrap up if the questions have all been dealt with. But without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Chris Hansford, who's Director of Regulatory Policy here at the SRA, and he's going to present a few slides to kick off our discussion today. Thank you. Chris, over to you.
Thanks, Tracy. Yes, just a few slides. As Tracy said, the idea is to get some discussion going, answer any questions you've got, and to encourage you to have a read of the draft business plan, which is pretty short and easy read, and the consultation closes on the 17th of June. So we're consulting on plans for the final year of our 3-year corporate strategy. So we're about 18 months through that now. And just a reminder of the core objectives in that corporate strategy and which this business plan is working to. So the first is, what many people think of when they think of a regulator is around setting and maintaining high standards for the profession, and importantly also for ourselves. So are we conducting ourselves and is our operation working as the best it could do? We're also focused on actively supporting the adoption of legal technology and other innovation. And then the third one is around anticipating and responding to change. I think we are all pretty aware that things change quite a lot in all sorts of different ways at the moment. So we need to keep abreast of that and make sure that we can respond to that as a regulator. And then just to highlight 2 really important sort of key themes that run through all of our work, and that is around trying to do what we can to promote access to justice, particularly for individuals and for small businesses, and also around supporting equality, diversity, and inclusion. So I'll run through some high-level points to each of those objectives. Now, starting with setting and maintaining high standards. So a core and ongoing piece of work for us is around qualifications and competence for those that we regulate. So we successfully introduced the solicitor's qualifying examination last year, so a single assessment for qualifying as a solicitor. And a key focus and aim of this for us was to make sure that aspiring solicitors have access to assessments that are reliable, fair, and cost effective, and trying to give flexibility in how you can qualify as how you can train to qualify as a solicitor, but making sure we have the same consistent assessment for all. So we introduced those. I think we had our first assessments at the end of last year for SQE1 and last month for SQE2. So the two different parts of the assessment. So I guess really important to us, and introducing something like this, which is a quite fundamental change to the qualification process, is monitoring and evaluating to make sure we understand the impacts and whether the benefits that we're hoping for come through as anticipated. Is everything working as it should be? So we have a big focus on that in the next business plan year. And also we made a commitment, I think rightly a commitment, to publish information about candidate performance data. So we will be testing with stakeholders how we put that information. So with aspiring solicitors, with education providers, with researchers, etc., to make sure that serves the purpose we hope it does. And then having robust and flexible entrance requirements and approaches is really important, but equally so is making sure that solicitors remain competent throughout their professional careers. So we will also be looking at continuing competence in the next business plan year. So we'll be looking at our approach. So do we have the right framework and conditions to make sure people and clients receive competent advice? And the first step of that is enhancing our data collection and analysis to really understand what's going on a bit better, and then be evidence-based in any further sort of changes or interventions that we might introduce. And then finally on this slide is around our standards and regulations. So we introduced, as many of you will recall, we totally reviewed our handbook, so all of our rules and regulations, and introduced our standards and regulations back in 2019. And as with SQE, we absolutely committed to monitoring and evaluating the impacts of those changes that try to remove unnecessary prescription and barriers to how firms do business and deliver services for their clients, while also maintaining the requisite standards. So we did a one-year evaluation of those new standards and regulations, which we published at the end of last year, and we highlighted several areas that we would look at on the back of that. And we'll be following through with those and into the next business plan year. And one important other area is around our transparency rules. So those requirements that we introduced to try and make sure consumers, members of the public, have access to better information that helps them identify and choose a legal services provider when they've got a problem. And we required firms in certain areas to publish price and service information. So we'll be doing a 3-year evaluation of that, and then looking at the results and seeing whether anything needs to change on the back of that as well. So another key focus is around anti-money laundering and work to tackle financial crime. I'm sure that you all know what a priority this is for us, also for the government, and this is of course an area where we have a regulator, an oversight regulator in the form of OPBAS that run out of the Financial Conduct Authority. So this will remain an area of focus, and of course the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the sanctions that followed has put an added element and focus on this. So what we'll be doing? Well, we regularly put out guidance and support for firms to help them understand obligations and to comply with them. We know that these change, and there's a lot there, so we try and support with that. And then we have an ongoing program of AML visits and inspections to try and ensure that people are complying and to help bring them into compliance from what we see within firms. We're also proposing to undertake further thematic reviews where we proactively look at the number of firms, and then we share the findings around best practice and also areas for improvement. So next bullet here, deliver consultation outcomes. We have put out quite a few consultations recently, which we need to, of course, now follow through with listening to all of the really helpful feedback that we get. So there's 3 listed there. So our approach to using our fining powers, we have literally just published the outcome of our consultation on this, looking at things like our level of fining, appropriate behaviours for fining, or more behaviours that may be inappropriate for fining, looking at things like fixed penalties, whether we can have kind of faster, transparent, less costly ways of dealing with certain issues. Publications policy is live at the moment. Very open consultation, which is looking at how we go about publishing disciplinary findings against those we regulate, how long we publish for, what information do we put out there, at what stage, questions like that. So have a look at that. It's a very open and is live at the moment. And then the final one here, health and well-being. So really looking at what more we can do to make sure that firms and individuals are clear on the standards that we expect around treating colleagues fairly, with respect, not bullying, etc., etc. We've had some really good feedback on that. The consultation closes tomorrow, so please do take a look if you're interested. Last chance to let us know your views as part of the formal process. Next, equality, diversity, and inclusion. As I mentioned at the beginning, this is a real core theme running through all of our work. We have a real focus on how we can collect and use data to highlight issues, and we're also proposing in the new business plan to have a focus on retention and progression within for underrepresented groups, particularly within larger law firms. Entry levels looking much better, improving all the time. So the area to focus, we think, is around retention and progression. And we also have some really core key research projects that will be starting in this area. So one is looking at the overrepresentation of certain groups of solicitors in our enforcement processes and in what's reported to us in terms of complaints against solicitors, and then looking at the attainment gap in professional assessments. So there are attainment gaps within the legal sector, but also within other professions, and trying to draw that together. And the last bullet on this slide is around continuing to develop our presence in Wales and the use of Welsh language. So I mean, we had a board meeting not long ago, which we held in Wales, and had lots of stakeholders, and just trying to learn more about how, what's happening in Wales, how things might diverge from England, and making sure that our regulation is fit for purpose in that context. So if we now move on and talk a little bit about technology and innovation, that's second of our objectives in the corporate strategy. So we will continue with this into or propose to continue this into the next business plan year, really looking at how we can support the adoption of beneficial innovation and technology, but also to continue to try and build our understanding of benefits and risks of developments in this area. As mentioned on the slide there, first bullet, then access to justice is a key focus here. So what can we do? What's our role? How can we target our activity to try and help access to justice and people access legal services in different communities and different areas, etc. And we've actually done some really good pilot work through some government funding we got through the Regulated Pioneer Fund in Wales and the Southwest, getting together a network of universities, legal services providers, advice agencies, etc., to try and understand specific problems, and then see whether together there can be tech and innovation solutions to those issues. So we will be putting a final report out about that in the not too distant future, as well as some of the products that come out of it, and we'll see whether we can replicate that methodology further. Focus on how we can support stuff through the front door through SRA Innovate. So the issues and that people are really facing when they're trying to innovate or want to innovate and not sure how to do so. So for law firms and also those developing the law tech. So we have lots of ways that you can come and talk to us about that, and we can support you. So we'll continue to develop that, learning from feedback we get and from getting sort of independent views on that. And we have some events coming up in Brighton and Swansea around innovation at the beginning of July. So keep your eyes out for those. We've also flagged here a couple of pilots that we have been undertaking. So around unbundled legal services, so where a client does part of the work on a case and a law firm solicitor will do part of the work on the case, and how that works in practice, what the benefits are, what the barriers are, what the issues are, how tech can help with that, and similarly around quality indicators and how people can get a better understanding of the potential quality of legal services providers that they identify, and doing some work with law firms. Other legal regulators are working with us on these, testing with consumers and digital comparison tools as well. So some really interesting stuff coming out of that, and we will look to publish reports on those and decide what the next step should be. And then finally, there's a list of partnerships and collaborations on this on the slide there. So we try and work with others to try and join up the environment a little bit and get the maximum benefit that we can for the legal services sector and providers and users of legal services, as well as those who are looking to develop innovation and technology to help in this area. So there's a list there of various things that we've been doing, including working with BEIS, the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, around what support can be given to small businesses, and some stuff with Agile Nations, where we chaired the first Agile Nations, the law tech element, which is the government's attempt to bring together different jurisdictions and have cooperation to have positive impact in this area, and some really interesting stuff coming out of that, looking at common platforms to respond to innovators from different jurisdictions, and looking at different common issues and how they can be responded to. So moving on to the final of the objectives around anticipating and responding to change. So as I mentioned at the beginning, really important that we try and identify, monitor and analyse developments in the sector and beyond that might have an impact on the sector or regulation. We've put a lot of work in the last couple of years and continue to do so around building up our capacity and capability in this area, doing horizon scanning work, etc. And we put a lot of information out there. I know that our risk outlooks, which highlights some of the trends and risks that we're seeing, as well as giving what we hope are helpful tips to those we regulate about how they might respond to them, as well as what we might do. We know that they're really well read. So if you haven't seen those, really advise you to have a look at them. Really hot topic at the moment around cybercrime. We have features on that, for example. We also have a pretty full research program. So big one here around analysis of the PII market. When I speak to people, to law firms that we regulate, then this is one of their big concerns: is what's happening with the PII. With the PII market, some people facing higher premiums and difficulties, and we are doing some research with the Legal Services Board, just trying to get to the bottom of what's happening, what's driving that, what the impacts are for firms and for consumers of legal services. A lot going on in the government around reviewing regulation, so benefits of Brexit, which we were engaged with for the legal sector, and this is an area where we really do try and engage to understand, where we should be focusing our efforts, and then how we can work with others to make sure that we maximize the impact that we can have, and that we are complementing, not duplicating what's going on there. So we'll continue to do that. So really full research program, as well as the evaluation program that I have mentioned already. Okay, shall we move on to the budget and practicing certificate fee? So within the consultation, we also set out what our proposed budget is for the next business plan, and some breakdown of where that money goes in terms of different business functions and areas of work. So please do have a look at that. Just to highlight that we are one part of the practicing certificate fee, but there are other parts. So the Law Society element, so the part of practicing certificate fee that goes towards paying for Law Society membership, Law Society consulting separately on its own strategy and budget there. And there are also the costs of the Legal Services Board, the Legal Ombudsman, etc. within that. So we expect that our practicing certificate fee will go up slightly, I think by £6 for individual solicitors, but that's offset by the compensation funds contribution will be going down by £10. So it's the overall impact not so significant. Okay, so that's a quick canter through some of the key points in the consultation. So I think the last thing to emphasize is that we really would like to hear your views. Is there stuff that we are proposing that you think is really good and really helpful? Is there stuff that you think we shouldn't be doing? What should we be doing more of? What should we be doing less of? And any ideas that you have on the themes out there about how we might take those forward and involve you and others in practice, all really welcome. So please do take a look at that and let us know your thoughts. 17th of June closing.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Chris. That's a really good canter through, which is a lot of material. It's really helpful. Just to reiterate again, you can submit questions live. You can do them in your name or make them anonymous. I've got quite a few to be going at, and I'm going to sort of maybe throw them at you first, Chris, and then I can add my own observations. And all the materials, the slides and stuff that you've just taken us through are going to be available too. So if anybody wants to clarify any points, you can do so during the course of the discussion, or as I say, the materials will all be available too. But if I may, I'm going to get on with the first question, because it's quite a broad question, but one that's really very relevant to what we are doing and planning to do under Objective 2 on legal technology. It's from Ryan Swan, who's at the Think Money Group. He's the Chief Legal and Risk Officer there. And he's asking us, Chris, how can we use tech and data to help law firms and lawyers better manage risk moving forward? And is this a priority for the SRA? So I will answer this one first to give you a bit of a breather. But my view is, Ryan, absolutely, it's a priority. We are very committed to working with all sorts of agencies on this. Chris has alluded to the fact that we've been very lucky to have quite a lot of government small scale funding, Regulators Pioneer Fund. We're very keen that anything we do in a sort of pilot capacity, we're putting that out in the public domain through various things. We put materials out pretty regularly. We've got a risk outlook that's going to be addressing cyber and some of the data risks going out very shortly. We are keeping a kind of watchful eye on work that goes out through the Information Commissioner's Office. And we're trying to do some pilot activity, which you may be very interested in actually in your company, around how different technologies, proprietary software and so on, whether we as the regulator, we can't endorse one product or another, but we can certainly work with the grain of innovators in the market to do things in an open source way. And that's something that we're going to be looking at far more in the course of the next year's corporate strategy. It's also an area where we're very open to people approaching us. We've got something called SRA Innovate, which you may well have used, and that's a service that people keep telling us is our sort of best kept secret. And actually, it's probably the channel through which we give most practical help to law firms who have got issues around technology and how they can meet our regulatory requirements by using technology, and whether there are sort of lessons to be learned from what others in the profession are doing. So we try and share knowledge through that mechanism too. But it's a very good question, and the short answer is yes, we are. The bigger question for us is, are we sharing it readily enough, and is it proving useful for the firms we regulate? But Chris, anything you want to add?
No, I agree with all of that. I think that it has great potential to support firms. I mean, there's a question that we get asked quite a lot, always posed, is at what point does it become more risky to not be using data and technology to help with compliance than it is to be using it? So that tipping point is always there at some way in the future. And as Tracy said, it's an area that we want to help with. We're looking at some pilots and some hopefully running some proof of concepts to look at how technology can help with specific issues and compliance issues, as well as what more we can do to help particularly small law firms understand what's available and what's safe without and beneficial without, as Tracy said, endorsing any particular products.
I hope that's helpful, Ryan, and very much we'd like to keep in touch and keep hearing from you, because it's a very relevant area for us. Chris, we've got quite a number of questions. You won't be surprised, given the current climate, about AML, sanctions, spot checks, what we're doing as the regulator. I won't name all the people that have come forward with those, because there's quite a lot, but the sort of summary question, if you like, is can we give more information about the types of spot checks that you are going to be doing on firms and why? How is it making sure that the sanctions regime is one that everybody understands? So do you want to have a go at that one first?
Sure. So yes, well, I referenced, I think, in going through the slides a little bit, that we try and keep up to date guidance and support on our websites to help people, and we also do proactive AML checks, including thematic reviews, firm visits, desk-based reviews, and what we're really trying to do is to check firms' compliance and bring them into compliance where this is possible, although obviously where there are serious issues, they'll be referred for further investigation. And we're trying to ensure that firms are doing their best to prevent money laundering, and also, as I mentioned earlier, to fulfill our obligations to our oversight supervisor, OPBAS. And in light of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, we have undertaken a series of checks to screen firms, clients against the sanctions list, where kind of open source research has identified that there may be exposure to the Russian market. And I think within the business plan, we're proposing that might be an area for a thematic review during the next business plan year as well.
Thanks, Chris. I hope that is helpful. I think it's fair to say we continue to put out communications around the sanctions
Yeah.
regime. We're in very close contact with the Ministry of Justice. There was lots of debate about professional services and the sanctions regime and what more may or may not be done, and how things are playing out. I think it's probably some of the best engagement we've had with the MOJ recently has been around this, and the speed at which we try to reissue our guidance and things like that. But if people have got specific questions, do feel free to come to us at any time. I've got quite a few more questions. Again, a number of people, I think, picked up by what you said about the PII market. What is the SRA's analysis of the PII market? Is it becoming more and more expensive? Does the SRA have any plans with regard to PII and pricing? Before I pass to you, I mean, I think what I would say on this is it's very interesting that whenever we try and engage insurers direct, we get a lot of kind of broad generalities around whether pricing is or isn't going up. Is it going up for every law firm? Is it going up for particular sectors of legal service provision? And we also get a lot of discussion triggered around, is it to do with the cost of regulation of the insurance profession itself? And are these things that are linked to the solvency regime of insurance companies? So I think Chris touched on it. We're doing a piece of research on this. What we're trying to do is get not firm specific data, but a much more granular understanding of how the market is operating, whether there are any requirements from the PRA, which is the insurance regulator, the Prudential Regulation Authority, or anything by the bank or HMT or government, and that analysis again we plan to share pretty openly. Beyond that, people can come to us again at any time. The big two renewal rounds in the year, we track the data from that. We've perceived that for firms who've got good records, can ensure that they can demonstrate how they're mitigating risk, their insurance premiums have not gone up as much as some of the other firms, but we are very mindful that this is an issue that could change very fast, particularly given the economic backdrop that we're all experiencing at the moment. So we're very mindful of keeping a close eye on this. Anything you want to add, Chris?
I don't think so. I think that the key, as you said here, is to really understand all of those underlying drivers and issues, and getting into the data. You know, we speak to people all the time. Some law firms, as I said, are telling us that their premiums gone up. They're not quite sure why. Others have not had the same issue. So really understanding that the underpinning, what's happening, the causes, and therefore if there needs to be any sort of change, then where that should be focused. We've consulted on this loads of times in recent years, and we haven't quite cracked it yet, I don't think. So really getting this research going with the right data to understand all of those issues, I think is crucial.
Thanks, Chris. I'm going to turn now to some questions that have been submitted live. So we've got one from Becky that I'm going to take first, if I may. Becky's asked us how and where she can get more information on the pilots and our plans for encouraging tech. So that is a great question. A few things. I won't repeat what we said, but SRA Innovate is a sort of mechanism and the trigger, and I really encourage you to get in touch with us through that. But SRA Innovate's actually got a couple of road shows and events. I think I'm right in saying they're the 5th and 7th of July. One is in Brighton, and I think the other one is in Swansea. But if these aren't convenient, that there are other things that we'll be doing throughout the year. Very happy for you to, as I said, make contact, and we can keep your details if you don't mind, and share things. We've got numerous ideas for further pilots, which we haven't announced yet. The unbundling one is already underway, and as I say, quality indicators is closed now, but we've got 3 or 4 different ideas that we may well put into practice for the next pilots, and some of them are going to be around different technologies and whether people see benefits from a particular approach or another. at any time, Becky, you can get in touch with us, as I say, to get any kind of clarification. We try and be a kind of broker between the different regulatory regimes. So what the Information Commissioner's Officer might do, the kind of smart grants that BEIS offers to some professional service firms in order to kind of develop things. We'll have the learnings from our Regulator Pioneer Fund, as Chris has already alluded to. We'll publish a full report on that fairly shortly. I think it's make direct contact, get involved with us, and then if you could be one of our sort of active stakeholders, sort of people we can bounce ideas off pretty readily. I don't know if you've got anything to add to that, Chris. I mean, it's good to know that you're keen to help, because if we don't get firms helping us, we never can really understand whether some of the recommendations that people like the CMA make around how consumers can get more engaged in taking legal services and being an informed customer are causing a burden for firms, or actually could be a potential benefit in terms of online marketing and unique selling points and so on.
Yeah, no, great to see the interest. Nothing further from me.
Brilliant. And we've got another question which has come in. I'm just scrolling up to make sure I can see it fully. It's from Jane Pittaway at Lawyers for Net Zero. And essentially, Jane is asking us, Chris, how can we make more of the fact that the legal community could be quite important influencers of what we do next in tackling climate change, and just how the aspirations to make a difference can be brought forward by us, the regulator, and not just the sector itself.
I mean, that's a really good question, and obviously a really important area, and one I think where we really would like to hear from people about what they think we could be doing, what the issues are, and we really want to start a conversation on this. I think we flagged it within the draft business plan that it's an area where we would like to do more to engage with people and really understand the issues here. So really good question, and please do respond to the business plan, or just always get in touch with us if you have thoughts and ideas on what we should be focusing on here.
Yeah, it's a brilliant question, Jade, and it's one that our board we discuss sort of high level a lot. I think it's one that's become even more pertinent when we start scoping the next 3-year corporate strategy, because, as I say, it's something where some of our newer board members have got a very particular interest. We're just worried about sort of going out with overly ambitious things that we wouldn't be able to really make work, or that we'll have to work in partnership with others on, and making sure we get our sort of get everything lined up before we go to public. But it'd be very good if we could keep in touch with you if you're willing, as we develop some ideas on that. So we're conscious of how important it is. We probably haven't done as much as we would like to. So I think is probably the fair answer. I'm going to say that we haven't had any more live questions, and I don't want to shut the event down, but equally I don't want to keep it going through lunchtime if you haven't got more questions, because you may want to go away and read the business plan or some of the materials and then submit in the link. So that's possible, and that's possible to be done after the event if you were watching it back and so on. There's still details of how you get in touch, and as Chris has already said, the business plan is open till the 17th of June. But I've got a couple more pre-submitted questions, so if you take that as my 5-minute warning for any more that you want to submit live, and then Chris and I will just deal with the other couple that we've got, and then we could wrap up, I suppose, around 15:15. But I hope that meets expectations, and if not, immediately alert us, and we can to take time to take some more questions. But my next one, Chris, that was pre-submitted is another incredibly pertinent one. How do you think the current cost of living crisis might impact access to legal services? And I suppose this is the perennial access to justice issue. Will it be made worse by the fact that the cost of living crisis is going to bite probably hardest on those who are already vulnerable?
Yeah, I mean, that is a really pertinent question. So I think that, as I mentioned, the importance of our horizon scanning work and our research, and we are doing some research at the moment with BEIS Business School, trying to segment consumers and how they're accessing services, which I think will be a really important baseline for understanding change. But inevitably, and we have been seeing it will continue to happen, then people's needs will change, the types of services that they need will change. You'll find people who perhaps didn't think that legal services were needed, or thought they might be able to afford them, might find that that's not the case. So things will change, and also for law firms as well. I mean, law firms aren't impervious to changes in the economic environment. I mean, some law firms have had, you know, a pretty good past couple of years, not universal across all, but we might see some changes there. So I think what we can say is things will definitely change, and we are doing what we can to kind of monitor and understand that, and to respond in an appropriate way.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those issues, isn't it, that you can't be sure. I mean, every day brings news of just how the cost of living crisis is biting, and we haven't even seen probably the height of the interest rate rises yet. There could be also, I suppose, the issue for some law firms will be that there may be new areas of business. Who knows what the impact on the job market might be. At the moment, it's a very buoyant job market, but if that were to change, that might be quite a worry for in terms of, you know, people needing employment law advice. And I guess there's also the awful prospect that we probably haven't seen in decades around homes repossessions, that kind of stuff. There's already a big housing crisis. We see it all the time, particularly in central London, where there's many more people homeless and sleeping in the streets and so on. So there could be all sorts of things where issues that we are all aware of become even more pronounced. I think the other thing I would just add on that is that on all of these issues, we try as much as we can, any data that we have or any perceptions that we are picking up, we again try and share. Chris talked about the Regulators Pioneer Fund. That was basically around testing technology as a boost to access to justice. But equally, some of the projects have quite a legacy, we hope, that we're hoping to share some of the learnings and the activities. We've got a particular mapping tool about where it's not just access to legal services and legal access gaps. It's around how people would feel about receiving initial advice through a sort of technological mechanism or something, and we're going to be sharing some of that. And we've got a sort of a very, very nascent tool that we've been developing with some of the data we have, and we're going to try and share that a bit more publicly too. If I may, I'm going to give one final question, and again, it's a very broad one, Chris. It's around how do you, the regulator, make sure your work is relevant to the whole of the regulated population? And I guess that means the largest city law firms down to the small sole practitioners. And I think that, again, is a very good question.
Yeah, it is a really good question. And, you know, some of our work is obviously relevant to all. If we're talking about how people qualify, about ongoing competence, some of those issues about well-being that I mentioned are relevant to solicitors wherever they are, wherever they practice. And some of the work that we do will be of more relevant to others. So talking about anti-money laundering is only relevant to a lot of those that we regulate, but not all. And also things like we put out support for those who provide advocacy in youth courts, for example. We have support aimed particularly at small firms and helping them comply. So I think that while a lot of our work is relevant to all, you know, we engage with lots of different types of provider and groups and try and make sure that the way that we focus it is relevant to them. And then also we have other, you know, more tailored routes for particular groups as well. So a big question, and I don't think there's a simple answer to that, but that was an attempt.
No, it was a good answer, and it really is a good question, because of course we do all the time need to be sure that we're meeting the needs of all of those who regulate. The practice certificate's a very level mechanism for making sure that everybody who is covered by us as a regulated firm or individual, that we are dealing with things properly. So it leads me very nicely though into my summing up, which is we hope you found this useful. We are very keen keen as a regulator to engage with people, and we want to try and do this through a variety of mechanisms. These webinars are just one means. We do face-to-face meetings now. After COVID, we can get out and about. We try to get to regions. We try and work with regional law societies, but very interested in your feedback, not just on the content of the consultation document, but on this webinar and whether you found it useful. We find we get varying rates. Sometimes we get lots of people attending, sometimes we don't get too large a number. I think that's to do with what everyone's doing and how busy they are, but the fact that this mechanism allows people to watch it back later through YouTube is one we think is useful. But please really let us have your feedback. As I said, the business plan 17th of June to give us your contributions. I can't tell you how much we value them, and how much we want to be proactive in terms of acting on feedback. There's another 3-year corporate strategy we'll start kicking off development on, and that's another mechanism again we'll be looking to engage with you directly. We hope it's been enjoyable. I want to give my thanks to colleagues in our comms team who organised it, and particularly thanks to Chris, who did by far the greater questions and answers in the presentation at the start. Thank you once again. Do remember this is available on Watchback, and do give us your feedback. That would be very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you.